Mitchell. You're an attorney and law professor and dean emeritus. You're a graduate of Stanford Law. And yeah, you've been involved with a lot of information going on today. We're going to talk about like the courts and the administration.
Mhm.
Uh, that's our focus today. Legal insights from you. And one thing we always ask every guest before we get to the heart of your story is what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
So last January 2025, as I was just, checking in on social media, checking in with my followers, I started noticing that they were pretty much freaking out from day one. And a lot of what they were freaking out about were things that they were hearing coming out of the administration or out of social media that was amplifying things coming out of the administration that were absolutely not true, or that were things that they were being told were going to happen. For example, Trump is going to declare martial law, or Trump is going to cancel elections. And first, I was surprised that they thought that was possible. But then very quickly, I realized a lot of it was just because it kept getting amplified more and more over and over on social media. And so I started just posting the reality, including the reasons, So, for example, no, he cannot cancel elections because in the Constitution, the states are the ones that run the elections. So I just started doing this and it just sort of snowballed from there. I was doing it because I had the knowledge and the wherewithal to explain this to people. I was very fortunate that I had this background as a law professor so that I already knew how to explain things in kind of plain English to people who weren't lawyers. And I just felt like I have this unique combination of skills and knowledge. I need to use it to help people understand what's going on.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting because I was a political science major at Bowdoin and sociology major. Never got to be a lawyer, but my brother's a lawyer. But the thing that I think is really significant about what's been going on is there are other things that they have done that are very like authoritarian in nature, kind of like Viktor Orban. And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and if you look at like the Civil Rights Act being reduced to the level that it's been reduced, the fact that they want to get rid of, in the South, as soon as the Supreme Court made that decision, the idea was the Southern states decided, like, well, we're not going to have any black candidates. We're going to remove all the black Democrats out of the system. So things like that are very worrying.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things I always say is, that it's the reality is already bad enough that you don't need to also have this over the top hype of things that aren't reality, because coming out of the White House and the administration and the far right, the podcasters that are on the far right and far right social media, they are making it seem even worse than it is. It's already bad, but they're making it seem worse than it is because they really want people to be confused and upset.
They want to flood the zone. I mean,
they want to flood the zone, right?
Yeah, there's a strategy. Like if you flood the zone, you're trying to get people to disengage. From a sociology standpoint, you're trying to make people be affected by anomie, so they don't get they totally get not involved at all.
Well, I mean, and the thing is that in this particular case, the messaging coming from the far right serves the same message, serves two different purposes for them, right? It gets their base all jazzed up, like, yeah, he's going to go in and buy Greenland or whatever he's going to do, right? And that gets them excited. And at the very same messaging gets people who are, center left or further, it's like deer in the headlights. They, like you said, they just disengage because they're overwhelming it. They're overwhelmed. Yeah. They're being flooded. So
expat, leave like James Baldwin. You still hear me?
Now you're frozen.
Oh, I'm still here. I'm frozen on your side. I'm still here. I don't see it.
I think StreamYard just doesn't like us.
No, you can. I'm still active.
Okay, I think
Are
there
you
we
good?
go. You're back.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it's your net. Because my net never froze, so it could be your internet signal.
Oh, and it's interesting because mine never froze, but you froze. So
Yeah. So
anyway,
yeah, I don't know. They might be having trouble. But like I said, it's like if you can flood the zone, if you can get people to become disengaged, which I think is the point for some of these folks. And then
right.
the thing is, like the way our media works, the way social media works, is based on clickbait. It's
Yes.
based on creating these hyperbole. If you create this hyperbole, so you always have to overstate even things that I like to look at. They overstate state like I want to push it, but like Midas touch, I like Midas touch, but then they sometimes will overstate what it is.
Right.
Then you
And
read it, well, it's really not. That's not what it is.
it isn't. It isn't what it is at all. And I always tell my followers, don't follow social media accounts where it's anonymous, where you don't have an individual who is taking responsibility for the content they are posting, because they get away with all kinds of stuff, whether it's on the right or on the left. If you don't know who it is that's actually posting,
Yeah,
then they can say whatever the heck they want.
there's no real journalism with that. Because I mean, real
Right.
journalism is you read the Times, read the
Yep.
Boston Globe, right? You read the San Francisco Chronicle. It's like you got a real journalist that has the facts. But today everybody's using AI
Right.
and they're just grabbing stuff. They're just saying third hand, fourth hand, fifth hand level stuff. It's all gossip. It's all rumor. It's not fact based at all. It's a very opinion based.
Well, exactly. And that's why, I mean, I think, I'd like to think, and from what I hear, I think I have, developed a reputation for, first of all, it's me. The buck stops with me. If all of my accounts are under my name,
Yeah, they're not
and I
bot.
am the only person who is, people keep saying things like, hey, could you have your team do this? And I'm like, what team? This is all
Yeah,
me.
team.
Yeah, exactly. It's all me, and the buck stops with me, and you know who it is behind it. And I stand behind what I say, and I try very hard to, I always give the facts and the truth, and I try to do it in a way that is,
Yeah,
just
for the legal
explaining
mind,
it.
you have a legal mind, so you're looking for facts.
Hmm.
You got to present facts. You're like, "Why is that vote?" And you go, even if you had a debate in political science, to win that debate, you had to have facts.
Right.
You could have an opinion, but if you're actually going to debate this other person and the mediator's there, it's like you got to prove your point. If you didn't prove your point, like if that's an opinion, that's not fact. Right?
Exactly.
And so it's like you can have an opinion, but it's not the truth.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it can be, your opinion may be based on, what you see in the truth,
Yeah,
but it's
it's a
not
filter.
factual.
It's a
And
filter. Like we all have filters, and as soon as we hear one word, we project and we don't listen to each other. And I think
very
that's a
true.
big problem today is that people do not listen. We've lost our listening. We lost our attention. There's attention deficit disorder across the world. Like nobody is willing to read more than a 50,000 word book, more than a 15-second, 30-second post. There's no critical thinking. There's no Socratic method. Nobody's looked at anything at any depth. And I'm a software guy, so I have to look at things and make sure things work. It's probably the same kind of level of analysis. Is like if it doesn't pass the test, the system won't work.
Right.
So it has to
Right.
be real, right?
You know what? I knew we had lost that fight when it became routine, even in regular media, for the how long will it take you to read this, putting at the top, right? This is a 5-minute read. This is a 15-minute read, whatever, the minute that started becoming,
Yeah,
common, where I I knew we'd lost it, because it was just like, this is telling people, you're going to actually have to read something, and it's going to take 10 minutes, and they just, hop right back off because they're looking for something that says at the top, it will take you 3 minutes.
well, that's the problem with all this AI. Is like you lose your critical thinking, you lose your subjectivity, you lose objectivity, you lose any kind of sense of what is actually real.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
everything is coming at you. So much noise. You can't tell what's true because even when you look at the endnotes and the footnotes in this AI stuff, it could be there. Go check it. Some of it's like it's all hallucination. It's not even there.
Mhm.
So like you really can't trust things that you can't verify.
Correct.
Like, and there's a lot of people who like to just like spout off things without really thinking about what's the consequence of that action. What's the consequence of you doing this or doing that? Like, and people don't look at it. It's like, oh, great, like AI is great until you look at it. Your energy bill went up, your water supply went down, and then like, okay, the cost of compute is more than the cost of workers. So, what are you saving these companies by getting rid of the workers? The cost of the compute is not actually making you do any better. You're actually getting tons of customer complaints. Like, so there's a lot of hype in this age of like AI and robotics.
Mhm.
I think there's going to be like a correction. A correction is coming because it doesn't hold water. A lot of the stuff they're promising.
So one of the things, that you mentioned that there's, people just they can't even verify, oh, is it AI? Is it real? And one of the things that I think makes Notes from the Front unique is that I provide the source documents. So when you read a post of mine through Notes from the Front, you actually have the actual court documents or the investigatory document. The thing that I'm explaining to you, you also have that document in your inbox or in your hand. And, which first of all means that, I'm going to be telling you what it really is, because that's a check. You could just read the document yourself and, well, wait a minute, Ann said something different. But also I encourage people who are, to actually read those documents and to start re-exercising their critical thinking skills. So I think people enjoy that.
I think it's real important for folks to kind of have that rigor. Like, just because you're out of college, and you're in the real world, like you should still remember the rigor that when you had to go to the library and
Do they still do that?
Well, I don't know about these kids today. I heard they're just using AI. And I'm like if they got you lost the Dewey Decimal System, you don't know how to find stuff, right? And it was one thing when you were finding it on Google. It's a whole nother thing when you're finding it on AI. And I think that the act of actually picking up a book and going through a book, reading the book, pulling the stuff out, and then writing it down or typing it in, there's something about physically doing it. It's like a musician. There's like if I physically play a piano versus somebody going on a computer and doing the part that I hand play, it feels authentic. The work that you do doing the real research, it feels authentic. But when you do the other stuff, it feels like it's like junk food.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
That's what it feels like to me, because I'm a child of the 70s, and I know when there was good junk food, but now it's not so good. When a Twinkie actually tastes good, but now it doesn't. But the thing that's interesting is all these like big topics, like presidential immunity, and everybody thinks, well, at the face of it, everybody's like, well, Trump can just do whatever he wants, right? And it looks like he just blows through a lot of things, because like even when he gets a court decision, he just doesn't pay attention to it.
None of that is true.
That's not true?
Nope. To address the immunity part first, which I think you knew because the way you said it, but for your audience out there, he does not have complete immunity. He cannot do whatever the hell he wants. He tries to do whatever the hell he wants, and the IRS thing is a perfect example of that. But he actually does not have that complete immunity. What he does have is very broad, almost complete immunity for official acts that are within the scope of his role as the president. So if he was so famous for saying, I could walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot someone in broad daylight or whatever it was that he said. And of course, that's not true. And that's also not true now. He cannot commit crimes with immunity. He cannot. Here's where it gets tricky, is those cases where the boundaries get pushed And someone has to decide, the courts have to decide, was this an official act?
The
Was
question
it
I
an,
yeah, but
right?
I would point out, like, the $400 million jet,
Hmm.
isn't that against the emoluments clause?
That I do not know. I have not looked into it, and so I hesitate to give you
It
an
seems
opinion
like
on
it's a
that.
gift, and you're not supposed to take gifts at a high level.
Right.
At that
It
level,
does. It does
foreign
seem like
power.
it's a gift, but
But
I
if
haven't.
you read it at a high level, you're not take something from foreign power.
Right. Right.
That's where I think people think that he blows through things like that.
That's right. They do think that. And a lot of the stuff that he does, I think intentionally has a lot of confusing, contradictory, talk around it. So, like I said, I don't know because I don't know exactly how that deal was structured. And I am not an emolument. I can't even say it without getting tongue twisted, emoluments clause expert. So I can't say.
Well, yeah, and then
But
another
that's
thing.
a good example. But what I will say,
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say what I will say to the second point that you made is that people, even now, still think that it doesn't matter what the courts say because he's just going to ignore court orders. And the reality is, I can count on the fingers of one hand and still have fingers left over the number of times they have actually, um, disobeyed an order. And those were those first, you probably remember last year, the planes in the air cases, where
Yeah.
they had already put the people they were deporting on the airplanes. The judge said, turn the plane around, and they didn't. But even there, they didn't because they had this argument that, well, it was already in international airspace, so you didn't have jurisdiction. I mean, yes, they disobeyed that particular court order, and that was a very unusual case. But the vast majority, and I'm monitoring all of those cases, and they've been sued like over 500 times now since last January, and in the vast, vast, vast majority of the cases, they follow the orders. Now they appeal them immediately, and often that means that the order gets stayed, and so it looks like they're not abiding by the order, but the reality is the order has been stayed or whatever the case may be. But boy, do they play that up for their base, right? They probably are responsible more for the misinformation that they don't follow orders than even is the left, because again, it's to their advantage. It works the base up like, oh, I'm so macho, I don't use, those radical judges. I'm not going to follow their rules, but they actually are following them.
But if you have so many cases to get thrown at the system, doesn't the system get overwhelmed, and then does justice actually get executed? Because
Well,
if
I
you
mean,
overwhelm the system, then what the average person thinks is it looks like they're getting away with it.
to the average person, it does look that way. And it really does depend. Here, I'm going to, sound like a lawyer, but it depends on what your definition is of justice. If you mean, when a decision is rendered, is it a justice focused decision? Then yes. If you mean, does, as soon as a lawsuit's filed, does something good happen in the next couple of weeks? Well, then no, because I mean, that's never been how the court system works. And it's definitely true that right now the court system is inundated. However, when things need to happen speedily, they happen. Just last week, and gosh, I wish that I could remember which case this was in, but there were two cases where the lawsuit was filed, and within fewer than 2 weeks, there was a decision a temporary decision, and there was a temporary restraining order in place within, in one case, it was by the end of the week. So they are maintaining, the courts are maintaining, but they are certainly overburdened right now. And I have just got to say, we have judges right now that are doing amazing work under unimaginable pressure They're being threatened. I mean, they're being threatened by Trump, but they're getting death threats. I was just reading that one of the judges who was on one of the civil cases against Trump, and that judge is retired now. He was they force in certain places you have an age at which you must retire. So he's retired now. But, he was talking about the bomb threat that, he came home one day from a walk in the morning and his house was surrounded by police, and the police said, "Is there anyone inside?" And he said, "Yeah, my wife and kids." And the police said, "Get them out because there's been a bomb threat." So unprecedented levels of threats and against these judges, and still they are upholding the rule of law, and they are upholding our Constitution, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for them.
But I would argue, just from like what certain people are facing, like if you happen to be a migrant that's picked up by ICE and you're put in one of these detention centers, you don't seem like you're having your rights respected.
No, not at all.
There are children, hundreds of children.
But that's a different issue. That's a different issue. That's not is the court not providing justice issue. That's they need to get into that system issue. So that's
they're not even getting into the system.
Right.
So the question is, that means he's able to take action. People are in there for a year or more, and they are kind of disappeared, like in Chile. There are people who disappeared, and it seems like the people that you're getting away with it. There are 300,000 Black women who were kicked out of the workplace because of DEI, and there's no resolution for them.
Well, see, here's the thing. That's not a case for the court system. And what I mean by that is the court system, for those people to get, I mean, they get there after months, get in front of the court, one at a time, when they have an immigration attorney who can file a habeas corpus petition for them. Because, the courts, that's just not what the courts are designed to do. To address the immigration, what's happening with immigration, which is deplorable, it's horrible. Who needs to step in there isn't the courts, it's Congress.
Yeah.
And they are failing us.
It's totally failing. But I mean, at the end of the day, they write laws. I mean, they're supposed to create laws to protect people.
Yes, they are.
Force like habeas corpus, but then they're saying immigrants don't have it.
Okay, well, habeas corpus is a constitutional remedy, not a law remedy. I mean, it is a law remedy, but it's not a congressional remedy.
That's not congressional, but like when people, because I know there's a lot of people who look like me who get caught up in this immigration thing.
Oh, I know.
And they get pulled in, and even if you have your papers, you still get detained. I know several people have been detained, and so there's this idea. Well, what are my rights? Like, if I'm able to be retained because they're profiling me, and then the Supreme Court says that's okay to do that, it doesn't feel like there's any justice, that their people are just doing whatever they want.
Yes and no. I would be the first person to say that, again, that what's going on with ICE and immigration it's disgusting, it's deplorable. When the cases get to the courts, they are overwhelmingly, the administration's getting spanked. But again, getting them there is the issue.
I think that's the problem. The problem is, systems that were built on 19th century, 20th century concepts are not actually efficient or effective enough. And the reason the public is probably thinking the things that they're saying that maybe legally are incorrect is because the system is not designed to deal with people who are flooding the zone.
Right.
And when you have people flooding the zone, it's a totally different issue. Maybe legally things are not as bad as it seems.
Right.
But for the people who are getting 300,000 women that got kicked out because of DEI, a Black person who gets thought to be who's an American citizen, somebody thinks they're West Indian. They get put in a detention center for a week.
Right. Oh, it's inexcusable.
So that kind of thing is like the system's not working. And like if I get in front of somebody, it takes 3 months, 6 months to get a lawyer. That doesn't work. So
I agree.
But so the question I have is like, what do we do in the future to have a system that is equitable and efficient?
We have Congress write the laws and rectify and remedy by, again, it comes back to Congress. And what we can do as people, like average American citizens or immigrant allies, is vote them the blank out in November. I mean, that is the remedy that we have, is we're so close to being able to take both houses. The majority is so slim. And yet, I just looked this up a couple of days ago, so it's at the top of my mind. Do you know that in the 2020 election, nearly 40% of eligible voters did not vote?
Yeah, that's political science. We've been tracking that for years.
Yeah.
Like if this is because of like anomie. This is because of disassociation. This is because of like the sociological things I studied. But people do not feel the system is working. So they don't participate. And so then they get the bad result because they don't think they actually have a voice. And you have to try to teach people. And it's hard to teach people because if somebody's working 4 jobs and they're not getting anywhere, right? And they're just and only comfort is like watching the TV or going to a game. They don't really understand civics, right? They don't know what we know. They don't understand like how a bill is made. They don't understand that. They maybe think the president does everything, right? They think the price of eggs is tied to the president. The price of eggs is not tied to the president, right? It's like they don't understand how the economic system works. They don't understand how the political system works. So there seems to be like a whole level of education to get an informed citizen that will actually understand that maybe they need to write to their congressman and say, you don't pass the SAVE Act, right? Maybe you should not do that. So, because I changed my name to take on my wife's last name. If that went through, I'd have to prove it. Now I have all the documents to prove it. But a lot of people don't understand, like married women might have to go and prove who they are with their marriage license and their birth certificate and bring all that in. And if you don't do it, then this type of legislation, they're going to actually like get rid of your right to vote if they put it through. And they're trying to sneak it through with this law tied to one of these security laws for espionage.
And not going to happen.
Yeah, hopefully it won't happen, but they're putting a lot of pressure on because of the DNI decision they made. So I mean that's a whole different thing. Like that's the politics of it with the law part of it. Whether or not these guys cave to get rid of the filibuster, I don't think it's in their interest to do that. But you never know. They don't seem to have a spine, so I don't know what they'll do.
Well, and that's why it goes back to we have got to flip at least one house in November. I think people just really don't understand. This last election, it still was well over 30% of registered or eligible voters who didn't vote. I mean, so it's almost like, I hate to say it, but we got, as a collective, we got the administration that we deserved because we didn't get out and vote.
Because people don't understand. They felt like, oh, under the last administration, I wasn't able to pay the rent. And now I can't pay the rent, even worse. Right? So they just don't see themselves getting ahead, when going to, I went
and
to
they
vote.
Give up.
Yeah. I mean, I went to vote and it was like $30,000 a year. Now it's like $100,000 a year. It's like, who's going to be able to afford that? I mean, so it's like the way that our system is being structured, it's being structured like French Revolution time. Like the top percent is taking all the wealth and it's not given any room for any upward mobility at all. It's not thinking like GI Bill. It's not thinking, that you're going to give people an ability to go to college and actually do it at a reasonable rate.
Mm-hmm.
Not thinking that you could even get, like, college kids coming out aren't even getting hired with credentials.
That's true. That's true. Now it's like I told my son, I said, learn a trade, figure out what trades can't be replaced by AI and learn that trade. We're always going to need plumbers. Yep. Electricians. We're always going to need. Your college degree isn't, necessarily going to help you at all. And as for the elites, I mean, now that sort of ties into the other thing that I've been doing so much with, some people are calling it the Epstein class. It's really the elite class. I mean, they are, yeah. And they don't want people, it's kind of like they want to keep people from being, educated enough that they can overthrow them.
It seems like it's like a robber baron idea. Like, my grandpa worked for the coal mine, and the coal mines used to have the company store, and they try to keep you in debt and keep all. My grandpa saw that and said, "No, I'm gonna be one of these guys that's not doing that." Right. So he was a farmer. He had his own house. He built his own house. He stayed out of that system. All the guys who stayed in the mining town by the company town, they went down big time.
Yeah.
Like, you can't let. Like, these guys want to put you into the box.
Yeah,
they want to control top down, and they think because they got this elitist point of view, they just think they should, that liberalism, that everything that came out of the Enlightenment, they don't agree with. They feel like if I'm a trillionaire, my point of view is like Calvinistic. Like, I deserve to have my point of view because I have the money. That means I'm a better person.
It means I'm smarter and I'm better.
I'm more moral than anybody. So they can just go and do whatever they want, blow by all the rules, all the laws. And there's certain people that say, "Oh yeah, well, okay, we're politicians. We'll agree with that." On both sides, you got politicians agreeing to let these guys do whatever they want. And that's where the public has to really, like you said, is like the 40%, 30% aren't voting. They need to start paying attention. It's like, what is the law? You go to your city council meeting, find out what your councilors are doing, what your state representatives are doing at your local level, figure out why they're doing things. And are they doing things in your interest?
And you know what? Even if you don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to do that, even just make sure you vote. Just familiarize yourself with the candidates and vote. That's, I think, so many people, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, that a lot of people just feel like, what's the point? My vote doesn't count. But you know what doesn't count? Your non-vote. Yeah, that really, that you're not going to vote is still taking action. And that action is helping whomever you don't want in office to win.
Well, you look at what that one party's doing. They're trying to make it harder to vote. They're trying to make it so women can't vote. The college kids can't vote. That, that naturalized citizens can't vote. They want to do everything they can. If you have a criminal record, you can't vote. Everything to make you exempt. Why? Because if you actually vote, right, you're going to probably vote to have health care that's affordable. Yep. You're probably going to vote to have Social Security that will be there. You're probably going to vote so that you have a living wage. And those are not the things that the boss wants.
Right.
The boss class doesn't want that. But somehow you identify with the boss instead of your own personal interest. And I never understood, like in the Reagan Revolution, like, why are you going to, like, why would you want to lose your union job and then lose $40 an hour and go down to 12? Why do you think that's a good idea? What your father didn't think that was a good idea, and your grandpa didn't think that was a good idea. Why do you think that's a good idea?
Yep. Because they said so.
Yeah, there's no logic to it other than, oh, I'm gonna point a finger at Willie Horton. I'm gonna go point a finger at some immigrant down the street that happened to do something. And it gets into the paper, and now everybody that looks like that is Willie Horton.
Yep.
But that's not true. But you fall for that. And then we went into the trap where we're in these bad loops.
Have you ever noticed, it's kind of funny how when someone who doesn't look like an other commits a horrendous crime, no one says, oh, all white people are like murderers and rapists.
Yeah. Like, look at the serial killers on the FBI list. Do they look like Willie Horton?
Nope.
They don't really look like that, do they? And look at the guys who do the fraud that brought us into 2008. How many people died? How many people's lives were destroyed? And, somebody that steals a Twinkie gets more time than them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do you really think about like what is going on? If somebody steals $1 million, they go to a country club, maybe they get probation. Somebody, steals like $50, 3 times they're out there in there for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. It's like what is going on? Like, what's the proportion? There's no proportion for the amount of damage actually somebody does. There's some fraudster that steals millions of dollars of like grandma's money, gets pardoned.
Well, I mean, the fraudster who's got millions of dollars of grandma's money, let's face it, can afford to buy the best legal representation. And the person who steals the Twinkie is probably going to get a public defender who is there for all the right reasons, but incredibly overburdened and overworked. And the best thing that public defender can do is cut a deal so that they can also go and get deals for all the other 100 cases they have.
It seems like we need to look at it from a societal point of view. Like if I was a sociologist and political scientist, like what crimes are doing the most damage,
mm-hmm.
right? And then look at it. Let's have a rethinking of how these laws are structured. If I'm a guy that goes and like poisons the river and causes all these cancers, my company does that, right? I actually killed people, right? I hurt people. I destroyed people's lives, but let's just settle that. Let's have some reimagining of like, what are the consequences for your actions? Like, let's actually count out the real cost of the crimes and the real, to me, what the real punishment should be based on the level of damage that you do to society. Oh, was that socialist to think like that? But maybe it's more like social justice. Like people are not being, that's why people get disengaged because they're going to get away with it.
Right.
So I'm not going to, I don't trust the system because like, I know Chuck is going to get 10 years and this guy at the country club is going to get like 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you got to start having real conversations like, and get politicians to actually, like, what are they actually saying they're going to do? Other than the price of eggs and the price of gas, because like there's other things that you need to be done.
mm-hmm.
I think that we get so caught up as like, oh, it's just the price of eggs, it's just the price of gas, and that's what we kind of be primed and say, oh, you really shouldn't think about special interest. I saw somebody saying African Americans are a special interest group. Aren't we citizens? Are we a special interest group or are we citizens? Like, we're not a special interest group. I'm not the oil lobby.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's like you think the oil lobby is more important than a group of like citizens.
Well, they're a lot more powerful is the thing.
Yeah.
Right? They've got a lot more money. They've got a lot more influence, more leverage.
And that seems to be counterintuitive if we're all equal.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't disagree.
And it's like, so how is that the more money you have, the better justice you get? That's not what you're taught initially. You're taught everybody's equal, everybody's got a shot, the system's fair. If you do right, you're gonna do okay.
Why are we taught that?
I think we're taught that because it fits the machine.
Yeah. Yep.
If a lot of our education was designed for an agrarian and industrial system, for us to just be cogs in the machine, not to be critical thinkers.
Very true.
You build a system like that, it's not surprising that people aren't engaged because they're not really trained to be engaged. They're not trained to do what, to think about use cases and algorithms and come up with like stuff that's going to make a robot work, like kind of stuff like I do. Most people aren't trained to do stuff like that. I kind of put myself in a place where I have to learn all the time. In tech, I relearn the core base of what I have to do all the time. I'm going to school. I have to. It's the nature of it. And because of that, I work with startups and I go wherever I need to go. But most people are kind of taught, I need a stable job. I need something, that's like secure. They're not willing to take risks. They're not willing.
Or they can't because they have a family and they need the security of a paycheck.
Yeah, but I mean, there's some of the security of going. And I've had a paycheck for 25 years. I just didn't stay in the same place like my pop. I moved around. It's scary to move around and do something that maybe you don't know how to do, and you have to drive into it. We're not really taught to do that. We say, "Oh, that entrepreneur does that." A certain class of people do that, but more people could do that if they were taught that that's actually how you should motivate yourself. I just don't think we're not really given the tool set. But I mean, that's kind of outside what we're talking about. But I think it actually affects what we're dealing with. Because the people who come to you are actually realizing, oh, I need to hear something more than what I've been seeing. I need to have something that's actually more evidence-based. Because that's what you pointed out. That you provide the evidence so then people can actually trust you.
Right.
So is there feedback from the people that follow you? Like you said, you have like a large amount of following. Do you get really good feedback from those that like the 400,000 followers that they give you like make you feel like, well, I'm going in the right direction?
I do. Yeah, they do. I will say that they're very quick to correct me, which usually is if there's a typo. So I know they're paying attention. And the feedback in terms of the content that I get, and this is why I keep doing it, is that it's helpful. It's helpful to, sometimes I'm reminding them just of the basics of, for example, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but a lot of people would be surprised at how many people really don't have a basic understanding of their First Amendment rights to free speech. And, they think that it means that they can go into a store and start spouting off, and right. See, you're laughing, but it's crazy that people think that. If I block someone on Facebook, they will often find a way to get to me and tell me that I'm violating their First Amendment rights. And I was like, no, dude, that's really, you should probably keep following me because, I'll let you know what it really means. So I do think that the feedback I get is that it's very helpful. I have, one of my followers has been putting several questions in the chat, so I really don't want them to feel totally ignored. So I'm going to just pick one of their questions.
Yeah, I see that.
Which is, well, yes, Kelly, the strategy is to overwhelm, but also if, you ask if migrants have grounds to sue for retaliation. And I don't think they actually do, because retaliatory prosecution is a specific construct in the law. And it generally means that the person that the administration, that, law enforcement, whatever, is going after a particular given person specific to that individual person because of who they are rather than what they are. So for example, James Comey, the indictment against Comey, that's, and actually I believe I read that Kilmar Abrego Garcia as well has, in fact, now I'm remembering, part of his case by the administration was dismissed just recently because the judge ruled that it was retaliatory. Specifically,
prosecution, right?
Exactly, specific to Kilmar Abrego Garcia because of what he supposedly did to the administration, not because he was, in the class of immigrants. So That's kind of a very long way of answering that question, which is when it comes to the actual action of retaliatory prosecution, it's specific to an individual because of who they are. Again, not because of what they are.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to get like what's going on. Like a lot of the cases I have been following because I kind of a politics junkie, but I watch sources like the cable news like MS Now or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I read the New York Times and read the Atlantic and stuff like that. But like when you get real information, not the stuff you see on people just going on TikTok and just spouting off all this stuff. And the thing about the algorithms, it's dangerous about the algorithms. They feed just like on themselves. You only see what you like.
Mm-hmm.
So the way these tech bros built the systems is you only see your tribe.
Right.
So once you start to see that, then you don't have any kind of a countermeasure to what you're getting. So you get flooded everything
exactly
that you agree with, which is not what the public square is supposed to be. When you read the newspaper or you see something from a journalist, you're getting something that's like, that is legitimate to me. That they're going through a whole school of thought. They were trained.
Right.
But you get this stuff that's just like what you like. Well, what you like might not be, it might be very toxic.
And what you like might be completely inaccurate and untrue. In fact, it probably is because you like it.
Yeah, you need to sometimes not see stuff you don't like.
Right.
The challenge, like, why do you feel that way? And you're kind of watching like Archie Bunker and Meathead comes in and he tells him something. It's like Archie doesn't want to hear what Meathead's saying, but he actually needs to hear it, right? But now you got to say, I don't want to hear Meathead. I put the muzzle on Meathead. I'm not going to hear it. I put the muzzle on Archie. I'm not going to hear him. Right. I'm only going to hear what I want. And you need to hear both sides. Yeah, it's in multiple sides because it's not
actually you need to hear the facts, and then you need to hear both sides of what people think about the facts.
Yeah, you have to have a basis. Like, what is actually the law? Like, what is actually a situation? What actually occurred? Right. Not what you think occurred, but the actual thing that happened. Or
exactly.
And the problem is we get people who say, well, I think this happened, or they said this happened. Well, the minute you said they said it happened, like, did you see it?
Yeah.
Do you have evidence that is actually true?
When people, when my followers comment saying something like, well, I heard or I read, but I don't remember where, if I happen to see that comment, I will usually respond, go get an authoritative source and come back and tell us. Otherwise, don't be putting information out on social media that you can't back up.
Yeah. Folks need to put these like crazy rumors out and just make these statements about things. And it freaks people out. I mean, people are already really apprehensive. People are already agitated. So you're just putting gasoline on a fire. And, you don't need to be doing that in a society that has all the guns that we have. You don't need that. And all the tension and all the kind of angst that people have, because it's like, you want people to kind of think a step back. Like, when you're in a conversation, instead of getting into an argument, maybe ask somebody, what were you trying to say? What did you really mean? Instead of like jumping on the gun and like, oh, you triggered me.
Yeah.
Everybody gets triggered, but it's like, did you really mean it? Right? What were you trying to tell me? Nobody thinks to step something back. And like do what you're saying. Go back and find the evidence.
Yeah.
Go back and bring it to me. So you kind of put the stop on it. But what do you want to do with your platform in the future? You just want to continue to do this or try to grow it, or?
What I want to do with my platform is hit a point where it's obsolete. And then I'll pivot it to whatever is the next thing that needs to be addressed. But I mean, ideally, there would be no need for this, if not after November, then certainly, hopefully by 2028, 28. Yeah, well, really 27, right? But yeah. I mean, I hope that's going to be the case. I'm not sure. I think it's probably going to take more than one election cycle, but I am hopeful and fairly confident that it will happen. I mean, things, you're a poli-sci major. Things always, the pendulum goes way over here and then it swings back towards the middle.
Like the reaction to the free and the slaves is Jim Crow. You always have the reaction of Barack Obama is Donald Trump and MAGA. It's like, a lot of Black people have seen over the years. For every gain we get this backlash.
Exactly.
We have seen it very, very specifically for our group. That is historic, and we can prove it. We can show you that it happens.
Are you familiar? I want to recommend a book to you that I hope it's okay that I would recommend this book to you, because I found it incredibly eye-opening. It's by the historian Richard Bell. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
And it's called Stolen. Are you familiar with his book, Stolen?
I'm familiar with Richard Bell. I haven't read that one, but I am familiar with his work.
It's the subtitle. I'm trying to look it up. Well, no, don't. Okay. I started it. I didn't mean to do that. But basically, it is the true story of these. I want to say the early 1800s. No, later than that. But it was 4 African American boys who were kidnapped by the slave traders, and their journey. And they actually, all but one of them, made it back. And it somehow told it in a way that, because it was through the eyes of these individuals, and they had the actual, Professor Bell has the actual information, was able to weave that story. It just hit in a way that very little that I have read about those things hit.
Yeah, it's great when somebody can actually talk about those times, or even like if you get into the Middle Passage and people don't really get taught about it. They don't get taught these type of stories, because it kind of skips over, because African American history is like low American history. It's like a subset. When we would argue, because I'm part Cherokee, that we're all Americans and it's part of American history. But it is American history.
Exactly.
But some folks want to go and say, well, it's a sub-state class.
And by the way, I was very happy. It turns out that a lawyer is one of the heroes in this story, so that made me feel a little good, But about the decision that came out last week to the National Park Service, right?
Yeah. They had to reverse that kind of garbage.
Yes. Yes.
They've been going around, like trying to get rid of, like even in the Pentagon, they went and got rid of a 4-star general.
They're literally. I mean, the term whitewashing has never been more apt than things like that.
And I've heard like groups like say that, well, that offends me. It makes my kid feel like guilty.
No, you're making your kid feel guilty.
Like I don't really, like, that's your own thing, but like you don't get rid of history just because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
the all about that.
If your kid feels guilty, then that's on you. That means you're explaining it in a way to cause your kid to feel guilty, because that's your narrative. There's another narrative, which is the kid has the opportunity to be someone who grows up to become influential in helping to remedy and balance things.
Well, these are folks that want to say we jumped on the ships.
Right.
These are folks that are saying we had the happy face on the whole time.
Well, that's my point.
That's the narrative you want to do. And then when you show something at the Smithsonian or at one of the African American museum, they try to pull all the stuff out of it. They just don't like it when you show them the truth. When you
Well,
show the truth and you have the evidence, the photographic evidence, you have the stories, you have the real information, it's very uncomfortable for somebody who wants to have a certain set of ideology. It's very much like Stalin or Mao or any, Idi Amin, anybody who wants to run a cult type of thing and wants the dear leader. You follow the dear leader, follow that. You want to follow that all the way down. You can follow it like what happened to Hitler. I mean, you can keep on following it and see where it goes. But like, it's not a positive train to go on that track. If you want to stay on it, you can stay on it and see where it goes. But that's my feel is like I feel sorry for people that aren't evolved enough to know better. But okay, it's a learning experience. You can always change. I always feel that people can change. They can get better. And my hope is that when people see things like what you're doing, that maybe they'll open their eyes and say, oh, maybe I need to learn. And you're learning until you're not here.
that's
So
true.
I think that like anything that you don't know, you should be willing to know what you don't know, right? And be willing to say that I could do better. I could learn. It's not a problem to make a mistake. The problem is to make a mistake and then cover over it and act like you never did it. That's the problem.
Right. Yes.
But I want to let people know that we have your QR code up. And if people go to your site, like you said, before we were on, what does that lead to?
So if people go to my site, that's also my Substack site. And people who aren't familiar with Substack, it can be kind of confusing only because it has so many different pieces that, I mean, it's awesome that you can have an email newsletter, you can have podcasts, you can, it's a very holistic service, but that means it's a little confusing sometimes to people. So if you go and sign up for my Substack, you can sign up for free. You do not have to pay. There is the option to pay. And the main difference is if you sign up for free, you will still get all of my articles or posts or whatever you want to call them that are explaining all these different things that we've been talking about. If you sign up for the paid version, you also get the source documents with each post. And you also get access to our private members only chat, which means there are no trolls because trolls will not pay even $5 a month to troll. So for $5 a month, you get like all the documents and you get this, the troll free members only chat and the live shows and all that. But you don't have to pay. It's free to get the important information.
I think it's great that you have that. I do a Substack myself, and that I love the way that format is. So people have the tier where you pay, you get a benefit. I think that's really cool, and it's a good way to communicate further on what we've been talking here. You can go into depth and get into the details and find that evidence-based stuff. I do think that people should support the people I have on the show. So please QR code that if you want to. I think it's worth it. If you've been here the whole hour, you probably want to sign up for the paying version. But I want to thank you for being on the show today. It's always enlightening to talk to people that have a vision, have a clear point of view, and I appreciate your clarity here.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I had a good time.
Well, thank you.
And your Substack. You said you're on Substack. Do you publish a Substack?
I have a Substack where I just kind of push out what these episodes in little clips and do highlights so people can go back and find them.
Okay, where is it?
It's I'll send you the link when you
get done. Please do.
Yeah. What's going to happen is I'm going to send you all the links. We're going to create a landing page for this episode.
Okay.
So then people will be able to watch this anywhere they want to, because we're on like big platforms like Spotify and Apple and iHeartRadio and Amazon, all those platforms.
Right.
Facebook and YouTube. So people can just pick whatever platform they want. And then we have a Substack, and I'll push out like a clip over this on the Substack. And then you click on it, you can go and watch the full thing on whatever platform you want. So that's what I'm going to do.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, and on Instagram, we will actually create some clips, and we'll tag you as a collaborator. We'll pick some clips based on our conversation, and they'll be 30 to 90 seconds, and they'll be pushed out within the next 2 days. But thank you for being here.
That's awesome. Absolutely. My pleasure. Anytime. I'd love to come back.
Oh yeah, we have people come back all the time. So
Well, there you
that's
go.